Hey guys, Darren Neese here. Do you need to nest a gallery within another gallery? That's exactly what we need for this garage work order system. Here's the screen we'll be designing and developing in the next few minutes. We'll have one gallery with one data source, then we'll put another gallery inside the first one to list off records that are associated with the parent record. In this case, we have a listing of technicians that are working that day, and we need to list off all the jobs that they have available to work on. Let's jump right in.
All right, now it is time to create our technician or mechanic dashboard where they can see all their names and all the jobs that have been assigned to each of the technicians, where they can click on a job, they can print it out, they can work on it, come back and actually mark it as complete. So that's mainly what we want to accomplish with this new screen that we're going to create. And I want to go find a new blank screen that's got everything that we would want on it, all of our components. We'll make a duplicate of that screen and we'll call this Technician Home. Now pretty much what will be on here will be a listing. So if there's any type of listing, you've got different listing type of controls. Number one, first and foremost, you have a gallery, which is what we'll be using here. But other types of listing controls, you've got a data table, which I don't recommend. You got drop-down lists and things. But the gallery is pretty much the go-to. If you want to repeat information from records or a subset of records, the gallery is the go-to control for this. So let's go ahead and add over a gallery. And most of the time you'll add this blank vertical. Now there is a horizontal. I use this for tabs or any type of repeating going across the screen. Now there is another option that's not bad. It's this blank flexible height. I don't recommend these top ones because it will put in controls that you're going to want to change anyway. They're all tied to each other. So let's say you don't want an image, you delete the image, and then you got all kinds of errors that you need to fix. So you might as well just start off with a blank new gallery. So one of these three. All right, so for this mechanic listing screen, this dashboard for the mechanics, there'll be varying degrees of information being displayed in each of the technician or mechanic rectangles. Let me show you a sketch that the client sent me to sort of give a depiction of what we're going for in this screen. So I'll put that on the screen here now. So you see what we're going for. And because we have varying degrees of information, my initial thought was to use this a flexible height gallery. However, the one I'm going to use is this blank vertical. I want to show you why I'm not going to use the flexible one. I'll add that one here as well. So a typical gallery that you'll be used to having is this wrap count. As you can see from the sketch that the client sent me, they want different columns of technicians. They just don't want it to go straight down one single column of technicians because we'd have to use the scroll bar to see all the information. So let's say we've got 1 or 2 or 3 technicians and we have the fourth. Well, we want the fourth one to appear at the top. So that's what you get. The wrap count determines how many columns that we'd have. Now, if this was a horizontal gallery, the wrap count would go vertical instead of horizontal, okay? Now, what I wanted to show you on this flexible height gallery is that over here, you got template size and template padding. So if I go back over here, we don't have that wrap count. So even though the flexible height would really serve us well in that it would be flexible, each row within that gallery would be flexible, that would be nice. However, it wouldn't do a wrap around. For that reason, I'm ruling out this flexible height. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I know that our order listing screen has this gallery here. It's got the headings at the top. This is a lot closer to what we want to get to, more so than just a blank gallery. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these controls. Now, you got to be careful when you copy multiple controls on the screen at once. It likes to select things that you really don't want in there and leave off things that you do. Okay, so I had the gallery selected. I had this rectangle that serves as the header, that dark red color, and then all the labels that are serving as column headers at the top. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and copy, and then I'm going to go over to this technician home. I'm going to remove that one that I just added, that blank one. I'm going to paste this over. If you set up your gallery headings like I do, which is to be dynamic, to be dynamically positioned along with the gallery, you don't want to move these controls just yet. What you want to do is click off to the side and deselect everything, then go in and just click on that gallery. Now, if we move this gallery around, everything else should follow with it. Now, there is some positioning help that I use in a lot of screens, and I need to go find a screen that has those. So these little 4 squares, these are nice to help you position controls. Make sure you're not too close or too far away from the edges of the screen. So I'm going to paste those here, and now these only show up if this debugging feature is on. Okay, so I'm going to click on this gallery again, and I'm going to make sure it goes down there. So these little squares, they are 20 by 20. And sometimes it's going to be hard to get the exact place where you want it to be at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with this Y coordinate here. So we want it to go up, so we're going to take away some of this Y value. And that looks about right to me, but because I changed that, the height was messed with a little bit, so I'm going to just move that down. All right, so very good. I'm going to turn off the debugging feature, and this is what the user would see at this point. The data that we want to get at are a listing of technicians. Now, I know we have a listing on our switch user screen up here, the very first screen here. Of course, going to this screen is going to log me out, but so if we click on this gallery here, I want to get at the items. So let's grab this. So you see is technician equals Y and is active equals Y. So we'll grab that and we'll use that as a data source. And of course we have errors because not all of these fields that are tied to these labels correspond to the employee TBL users. It doesn't correspond to the TBL users data source, which we will correct here in a moment. Now something else I'd like to do, let's make this template size a bit bigger by going with 100 perhaps, maybe even 200. Okay, there we go. And I think I'm going to take a lot of these things out of here. So let's go ahead and rip these things out of here. All right, so I'm going to take out status for now. Now I would like their images to show up here. So how we have this set up here, if I move over this label and how I set up these labels, which I showed you how to do this in previous videos. If you have that set up the way that I've set it up before, this will all move dynamically, which is nice. A lot of times you need to go in there and move these headings around. So that that upfront work that you spend on that. So just to show you, in case anyone didn't watch those videos or you need a reminder. So these labels in here, if you look at the X, they look at this label up here at the top, look at its Y coordinate, and it subtracts the parent.x. And it also corresponds to the width of that label as well. And then any subsequent labels up here, they reference the label before it. Okay, do you see how that created is highlighted in green? So it references that X and width to come up with its own X. Okay, so hopefully you guys find that helpful. Now I'm going to go back up to that switch user screen because I saw something there that I like, which is the image for the technician. All right, very good. And I'm going to move this up in the corner here. Okay, I'll remove this one, remove this. We really don't need that many here. Okay, we don't care about when the record was created here, so this. So this is our users table. So let's look at full name. Nope, let's take a look at title. That might be good. Yeah, it is. All right, so probably want that to be centered. And to be honest, I think I might want this image to be bigger. And I don't really know that we need all that dynamics. This really isn't a grid, so it's okay that we're deviating from all this dynamic stuff that we had set up here. So I'm going to put this in here. I'm inclined to give this a light gray color. Now, if we go over to copy controls from here, we do have a primary light color. So I'm going to click on that rectangle and just grab that. We'll just go over here and type fill. Very good. Paste that there. And we'll make that the width of this image here. And for the font size, let's make that, let's make it bold. And let's make this wrap count to be at least 2. We might end up making it 3. Because I really don't want them to have to use any type of scroll bar. So I'm going to make this label right below the image dynamically move in size with that image control. So for the X, I'm going to reference that image.x and then do the same thing for the width. Image.width. Very good. So if I size this image up, there's one more thing I want to do for this label, which is I want to set the Y to reference that image.y. And then we'll add the image's height. Okay, so it'll be there no matter how we size that image. Okay, and the reason I made it so big is I feel like we might need the width here for some of the names. Okay, so right now everybody's name works out well, which is nice. And what's great about using a title is we could go in and modify. Let me go into the login screen. Log on as myself. Let's look at the users here. So I'm gonna click on myself. You see how it says dev here? Well, perhaps I have a nickname or I want to put something shorter here. Darren developer. I'm gonna save the record. So now if I go back to the login screen here as a technician, that will take me to technician screen. All right, so we can modify that without actually messing up anybody's name. So that's sort of the nice thing about having an alternative name type of column. I think what I will do is give it a little bit of a border, and for the border color, I'm going to use the color from that label, and I might make it 2. I think that would look nice. And then we'll go down here and make sure this has a border as well, so it looks like everything belongs. Very good. And I might try out a little thicker of a border to see how I like that. Okay, so there we go. I think the images, the image is just way too big. I think we'll probably need to stick with like 100, oh my goodness gracious. Probably need to stick with like 160 for the height and the width. Maybe make that font for the label smaller, and I'm gonna make this something like 200 or 250. Something else we could do, we could just use their first name to save some space here. So if I just use first names, just use first name here and see. I think that's gonna work out a lot better. Okay, so the purpose of the screen is to show all the active orders for each of these technicians. Perhaps we have 12 mechanics in the garage, but only half of them are working that particular day. So what I'd like to do is grab a listing of all the active jobs that are currently out there, which more than likely will be mostly for the current day. Now, some of the jobs could span days. So if somebody needed to rebuild an engine, I have no idea how long that takes, but let's just say it could take 5 days. Or a full week. So instead of looking for the current day, we'll just look for all the jobs that are open, and we'll do that on the onVisible event for this screen, because jobs I'm sure will be added throughout the day. So if you come to this screen, you want to grab those new orders. We'll probably need to put a refresh button here or put a timer on here that will refresh every 5 to 10 minutes, because this screen will be a big screen out in the garage. And there might be some times where a technician may not touch the screen for 20, 30, 40 minutes, perhaps an hour. And during that time, mechanics could be looking up at that screen and expecting to see up-to-date information. So we might put like a 5-minute timer on there to do a refresh. We'll do that later. So something I just realized, for this screen that we have here, Technician Home, it really should have the name screen in here with spaces. I've touched on this before in previous videos, but that is actually a part of the Microsoft recommended practices, that each screen would be very human readable, have the name screen in there. So I want to stick to those standards, those recommended practices. Okay, so by doing that, whenever you change the name of a screen, you have the app on start that references those screen names. It sort of messes with that, so you need to go over here to the app and run the app on start. For this screen, I want to go into the action on visible, and I want to grab all the active orders and put it into a collection. We do have a screen that lists out all the active orders, so let's go there. So this is the order listing screen. We have a listing of orders that either order placed or have been started, and we determine that by looking at this. So here is an order table. I'm going to click on Edit Data to go look at that. Our orders really should have statuses on them. So I'm going to create a single line of text, and we're going to call it status. So right now we have 2 statuses, started and order placed. So how those would be set up, okay, when we're placing an order, whenever we start adding line items to the order, that would be started. So the order has been started. The order has not been placed yet though. Once the order has been placed, once the first technician clicks on one of the jobs, because an order could have multiple jobs split up amongst several mechanics. Once the first mechanic clicks on one of the jobs in an order and starts on it, the order should have a status of started. This should actually be, instead of started, I like this to be just created. An order has been created. Then the order has been placed. Once a technician starts on one of them, it will have a status of started. Once all the technicians have completed, we'll say work completed or work complete. Then once the customer pays and picks up their vehicle, we will say the order is closed. 5 different statuses that an order could have. Now we will programmatically set the status to each of these values. This isn't going to be some drop down where somebody could just select one. That will automatically be done just within the business logic of this application. So we have created a status as a single line of text. Now over here in the PowerApps Studio, we have to do a refresh on the data source, otherwise it's not going to know about it. Now we need to do a bulk update of values here on the screen. I'm going to add a button that does not match because it's going to be temporary. I'm just going to delete this here in a bit. So we're going to look at the order created and see if it is blank or not. Okay, so I'm going to do a for all. And we'll update all these records here. Here's the name of the gallery. And we'll use the my keyword or the as keyword and specify a like an alias for the records inside that gallery. So you do that with the as keyword, and the little variable or moniker that I like to use is just my. As we loop through, this for all function is used sort of like a loop or for each loop. So go through each individual item, and for each item, if I want to get at the current record within that loop, we'll reference that my keyword. Okay, so I just wanted to explain that. So we'll do a patch, and it's going to be on the data source, which is TBL order, and then we'll do a lookup. Do a lookup where the ID equals my.id. That's going to give us the record, and then we need curly braces for all the stuff we're going to update. Or I should say the one the one column that we're going to update, which is status. We should probably indent this over a little bit. So the status will be based on this. Okay, so if that is blank, instead of this item, we'll reference my. Okay, so let's go down to this label here. So if it is blank, it's going to be created. Otherwise, it's going to be order placed. Okay. Created and order placed. Okay, so this is necessary to do something like this if you add a new field and you need all the current records to be populated with the values that the business logic will in the future handle. That business logic isn't in there yet, but will be. I'll need to revisit the order screen to actually put that in, and we'll actually be updating that status field there in the screen that we're working on today, the technician screen. But for now, we'll just do this. I'll run this, and we'll wait while this is done. So we've got probably 30 records. So you saw the button became enabled again, which means the process ran. I don't see any errors here. So if there was an error in running that whole process, we would have seen an error. So now we should be able to comment this out and reference the this item dot status. Look at that. Very cool. All right, so we will go back over to our technician screen. And for this button, if I write some code there, maybe I might want to reference, or I might want to do an update like this in the future, either on this screen or another screen. Instead of deleting that button, what I'll do, I have a debug feature, which I've covered in previous videos you can check out. But for here, I'm actually going to utilize that feature by saying var show debug, debugging. And the users won't see that. So for this screen, I want to go out and grab, so these are the different statuses. We want to grab anything that's got order placed or has been started. We don't care about work complete, because if it's work complete, it means all have been done. They don't need to be seeing that. It's done, it's processed, it's out of there. So we're just looking at orders that have these two values here. The screen use, I really don't care to have a spinner at this point for that, so I'll just put that at the bottom. And I only want to use this spinner for pertinent stuff that I'm doing here. Let's do a clear, collect, and we'll call this column now the best practice for using column names specified by Microsoft is COL. And we'll say active sales. Here we'll do a filter, TBL order. Okay, so I like to keep this consistent. Active orders. Okay, so we'll do a filter on that, and we are only going to be looking at the orders where the status equals. I think I might use the keyword in here. Well, we have a delegation issue there, so let's try to stay away from that. Status equals order placed, or status equals. All right, so we have no delegation issues there. All right, so it's going to throw all the active orders in there. Now, we also want the jobs from all those orders. Okay, so the reason why I'm throwing these values into a collection variable is because we're sort of going to be doing a little bit of a join. Not really. Joins are something you do within SQL or structured query language, which you don't have access to in PowerApps, unless you're using SQL Server and you can reference a view or a stored procedure. But in this case, we're using SharePoint, so we don't have access to joins. And you don't want multiple queries going on for every row within a gallery. So what I do in my applications, I try to get a filtered result set that I'll need to reference within a gallery, so I'm not trying to join things and not have repeating queries within a gallery, which can really slow down your application. It's really inefficient. So that's why I do this here. So I'm going to do something similar for jobs. TBL order jobs. All right, so we do need a status for job types as well. So let's go in there. So we'll create a column over here, and we'll call this status as well. So over here, I'll say order status. So for job statuses, I'm going to say blank. That means it has not been started at all. Nothing has been done with that job by a technician or otherwise. Now, once the order has been placed, these jobs the technician should be looking at them and should be starting on them as soon as they can. So if it's completely blank, that's probably in this created stage here. All right, so for the individual jobs, the status for the job, so once the order is placed, I'd like for the status for it to be ready. So it's ready to be done, which should not be confused with complete. Okay, so it's ready, say in progress, then completed, and I think those are the only statuses that I want to have. Okay, ready, in progress, and complete. So we're going to go get the ones that have ready, okay, so we'll get those. So in order to execute this and for these collection variables to actually be created, populated, because that's in the onload, what we need to do is click on a different screen and then click back into that screen and it will load it. All right, so those collections have been populated now. So let's do a little test here. I'm going to open up this debugging feature here. I'm going to add in a little label that I can use for debugging the type of things. And I'm going to give it a weird background color, maybe even like a green. Give it a border. And I might say something like testing, and probably make it a little bit more narrow and put up here by the debug button. Okay. And I might give it a font size of 11 and maybe make it a little smaller. There we go. All right. So what I'm going to do for this little testing label, I'll go into the visible and I'll set this to only show up if the debugging flag is turned on. Then what I'll do is I will copy and paste that twice, and I'll put these over here. All right, so the first one, I'm gonna do count rows, and I'll use CLL for collection. There's the active orders. So there's 7 of those, and something we could do. Seven orders. And over here for testing, we'll say call order jobs. All right, so we have 0. Of course, we haven't populated the status column for the individual jobs, so we'll need to do that. Now, do you remember over here for orders, we had a little button up here. we could probably have a button that actually populates it for these other ones here. So here for the second button, we'll say if my dot status equals order placed. If that is true, then I want a patch. And we won't do a patch if it's not that. And the only other status right now is created. And in this case, we'll say TBL order jobs. There we go. And within the order jobs, we have a column there that is a foreign key over to the orders. So we'll look at order ID. Okay, we match that up with the ID from the order that we're looping through. So for the status, we don't want to do an if. We already know that we want to set this to be ready. Ready to be worked on. And we'll wait a few moments. There we go. And I see no errors, which is good. Now let's go over here to order jobs. And we'll scroll over here to the side. And here's a status. And right now we just have just a few readies. Okay. So only a few of those orders were set to be order placed. Let's make sure that disappears when we do that. Very good. Now we'll go back to that screen, and that should populate our collections because we go in there, we initialize, or we trigger or fire that screen on visible. So now we have that. Now if we click on the debugging stuff, you see we have 7 orders and we have 7 jobs. Let's actually make sure that's true. Let's go in here and we will filter by ready, and as you see we have 7, so we know that's accurate even though both of them say 7. For this gallery here, I think we're going to be able to get away with making this a bit smaller, maybe 170. So we're going to have 3 rows, and I'm going to play with this number 172, 173. That looks good. I really don't want any scroll bars, so if I run this, so what we will need is a nested gallery here. So I'm going to click on a control inside this gallery. I'm going to insert gallery here, blink vertical, add that in. Let's give it a background color of gray. And then the data source, let's go ahead and I guess size this out a little bit here. Data source will be that collection for the jobs, which is called call active order jobs. Add in a label. Okay, there we go. And we will set up the template size to be 30. Okay. And then I'll go into the template, fill, and for now we'll just say white. Okay, then we have the title, and we'll set up the width to be parent template width, and we'll give it a little bit of a smaller font size here. All right, so I'm going to go with 11 and see how that looks. Maybe 10. Very good. All right, I'm going to set up this label inside here to look at the gallery's template height. Then I'll set up the gallery to look at, okay, for the height, have it look at the parent.template height. Now we'll subtract self.x, multiply that by 2. Sorry, I mean that to be the y, not the x. Just in case we mess with the height of this parent gallery, I want this thing to automatically size. All right, so I'm going to go look at the jobs and see the type of information we have to work with here. And it looks like we have this. So we've got the category, the type, and the subtype. Looking at this text, it's a bit much. So what I'm inclined to do here for the text is to do a split on this. And I want to do a split that looks like it's a space dash space, which is what we did before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the, let's do the last one, which last should give us, okay, and then we will do a result. Very good. So now we don't need so much room there. In fact, we could probably go down to 30. Something you probably notice is that each of these technician squares, rectangles here, all the open job types are listed there. Okay, we want this filtered down by the technician. For the data source, we have this. So let's filter on that collection. Technician assigned ID, very good. And we will say where that is this item dot ID. And it looks like Abigail's doing most of the work. I think I'd like to look for a different color for the background because I don't want this all to be gray all over the place. Now I might pick a different, like a darker gray for this one. That might help. We'll use the color value function and we'll go in here and we'll just make it a really light gray. Something like F5, F5, F5. It's going to need that pound symbol in there. There we go. So it looks a lot better, I believe. So if it is blank, it's not going to look bad. All right. So these jobs have been assigned to a technician. At this point, they're either going to be read as ready or in progress. I think what we should do is for readies, we'll make them green. And for in progress, we'll make them yellow. And we're not going to be displaying the complete, at least on my mind for now. But if we did, we can make that red. Sort of like a stoplight, green, yellow, red. Green means go, like get started. Go ahead and start on it, you know. I'm going to make this centered or not. If this item status equals ready, otherwise we'll say hello. I really don't care for that green color, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over a label because we're going to have some text in there. I'm going to pick that green color and I'm going to put perhaps white there. I think that looks nice. So here's the hex color for that. Color value. There's our green color. So now for the color, we're going to do something similar. If it's green, I want white. And if there's a yellow color, I want black. I think I'm going to try to make this gallery sort of transparent instead of using these gray colors. So there is a keyword in PowerApps called transparent. Let's go with that. And let's set the border number 0. Now I'm going to set this up to be maybe 40 pixels on the gallery. Then for this label here, I'm going to look at that. Now I'm going to subtract 8, and then for the Y, I'm going to set that up as 4. Set up a padding of left for the labels. And then also for the width for this, I'm going to subtract 10 and give it an X of 5. We have to take into account there might be a scroll bar there. So let's subtract 20. Probably in most cases there aren't going to be 4 here. Let's just assume that we're not going to be dealing with that scroll bar. So I will say 10. All right, we can delete that up there at the top. Okay, I'm going to save. I can go back on this color, make this a little lighter. Now that I'm working with this, I don't know that I like the heading up here at the top, so I think I might rip that out. Is there really any need to have that there? Nah. So I'm going to take that out. I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to move this gallery up. Okay, that's going to give us more space to work with here. All right, I sort of want to distribute some of these jobs to make it maybe more realistic looking here. So let's get at the IDs. This item.id. So let's move one over here to Randy. So on the click event, sorry, the unselect. What I'm going to do is I'm going to patch TBL order jobs. Okay. Look up technician assigned ID. And then what I'll say here is parent dot, parent dot selected dot ID. That should do it right there. All right, so let's try this out. I'm gonna click on this and then we'll actually move it over there. Now realize that we're dealing with in-memory collections. We need to go to a different screen and come back. This type of stuff isn't gonna be done by the user. I'm just doing this now just to move some of the data around. Okay. All right, so it should have moved it over there. Doesn't look like it did. Oh, we actually want to set it to a literal value. That's what's going on. Of 4. Okay, so we'll give out 1 or 2 of those. Go to a different screen and then come back. Look at that. Very good, very good. All right, I'm going to save. Now, I don't want this actually to be in there. I'm going to comment it out because I might want to tweak it. Might want to use it here the next few minutes. All right, so now we don't need these IDs to show anymore. We just want the first name to show for now. So the next thing we need to do is whenever a technician looks at the screen, they say they have a job, it's ready to be worked on. I want them to be able to click on this. We'll have a pop-up that pops up like a modal window, and that little pop-up, that modal window, will allow the technician to go in and actually say, okay, print this off, because we've got a little printer for the technicians that will print off all the information for that job, but they can click a button that says, okay, I'm starting on this now. So that's what we'll do next.